Hot and spicy Changli isn't far from releasing, and I am sure you're all wondering what our best synergies are. That's what I'm here to tell you today. My name is Juice, and let's get into it. Before we get into the nitty-gritty specifics, I think it's worth outlining Changli's playstyle so we can better understand why her synergies work so well for her. Changli is primarily constructed to be a DPS, dishing out large majorities of a team's overall damage. You can either play her as her own main DPS with a team that focuses on her exclusively, or as an outro skill machine with a secondary DPS that can benefit from it, which actually works pretty dang well in Changli's case. So her best teams are either going to be about abusing swap cancels with her, notably through her skill, or about supporting Changli's own damage and playstyle. Changli herself also has pretty good AoE, but a majority of her teammates are single target, so you'll be able to flex your teams into pretty much any tower stage. With the way that Wuthering Waves team building works, I'll dedicate the first half of this video to her quote-unquote second slot options, and the latter half to her quote-unquote third slot options, which are the likes of your damage buffing supports. With that being said, it's time to delve into Changli's most high potential synergies based on what we know currently. I obviously need to start with the Sheep Kid since she's going to be a part of Changli's best in slot team. The reason why Encore adores Changli so much is because Encore absolutely adores swap cancelling, and Changli is able to pop on field during these swap cancels and dish out a considerable amount of damage, not to mention the 20% fusion damage deepen that Changli provides in her outro skill, which Encore eats up in spades. It also helps that Encore herself is a very powerful DPS unit, and Changli becoming her new best in slot support makes her the most powerful standard DPS currently available in the game. Emphasis on DPS there, Verina is still your best bet on the whole. Changli also outdamages Encore's previous two best in slot teammates in the same position, Sanhua and Yinlin. And so many people already own Encore, so that makes this amazing synergy extra accessible. Main flaws of it is that Changli's full main DPS playstyle isn't taken complete advantage of here. Now for everyone's favorite spy lady. Yinlin is a great pair of Changli if you want to hone in more on this gorgeous Wayfinder's nature as a DPS. In fact, I'd recommend Yinlin the most as her secondary teammate option if you want to play Changli hypercarry, because Changli gets a ton of field time and Yinlin does very high personal damage. Yinlin also gets to abuse Changli's swap cancel windows with her skill. Yinlin is also Changli's most AoE teammate that she can play with. The only main flaw is that Yinlin's outro skill is completely useless with Changli. It's a fairly straightforward synergy in which there isn't much for me to technically explain, but I'd say the true main pro of this synergy is being able to use two lovely ladies together in the same team. Then for Mortefi, who's a very potent generalist 4-star hybrid option for Changli. He will perform fine with nearly everyone really, plus he doesn't take up much field time and is a decent hypercarry support option for Changli. Mortefi's Static Mist also provides 10% attack to Changli, and its S6 provides another 20% attack, which is very meaty for the team. Having those really solidifies his position. He's able to buff up to 52.5% attack, which is very impressive. Moonlit Clouds provides 22.5%, Static Mists 10%, and then his S6 is 20%. You can also run Impermanence Heron on him to provide 12% extra damage to Changli, which is wonderful. A ton of utility baked within this guy, great choice, though note that Encore and Yinlin are still stronger despite the strong case you can make for Mortefi. Sanhua is the other generalist 4-star hybrid that tends to work with almost every character, though unfortunately for Changli specifically, Mortefi beats her up by quite the margin. This is for a few reasons. Listen, it's not that she's totally bricked of Changli, because she does offer a few things. A short concerto rotation and very decent sub-DPS buffing, while also being able to take advantage of Moonlit Clouds and Impermanence Heron. She falls off when you take a look at how she buffs basic attacks very heavily. She also doesn't contribute a lot to the team's damage compared to Mortefi. All of this for me to say, TLDR, use Mortefi instead if you have him, he's better, otherwise Sanhua is okay if you have literally nobody else. Chixia is a very divisive mid character on the whole, but because I got so many comments about her on my previous video, I thought it'd be worth throwing a bone to all Chixia fans out there by discussing her Changli synergy, since while she is far from Changli's best choice, she will absolutely adore having Changli in her teams. Chixia has the second lowest DPS as a main DPS in the game, so really note that I don't necessarily recommend this. I'm only talking about it because it functions by a technicality. Chixia loves Changli for her outro skill buff, which you can utilize very nicely, making full use of it. It's a massive potential damage increase for Chixia's own teams. Her own rotation is also pretty short, which is favorable, only lasting up to 9 seconds. Alright, neat enough stuff. However, her DPS is simply too mid to justify using her over Encore, and if you don't have or want Encore, then just use even Sanhua at that point because she's free. But yes, for all those curious Chixia mains out there, Changli will for sure become her new best bet. Now for the latter half of this video, where I discuss the third option that can comfortably support Changli's teams. I'm grouping Verina and Baizhi because while Verina is technically far better than Baizhi, you're using them for the exact same reason. Team-wide buffing that can boost the damage of both Changli and the secondary character that you're playing her with. Team-wide generalist buffs that can apply to 100% of any character's kit has a lot of inherent value, so they will be your two main picks. Obviously, Verina is better, but Baizhi will be really solid if you want to save your Verina for another team comp in your tower runs. Taoqi's an odd one. By a technicality, she can buff Changli, but it's far from anything recommendable. Allow me to elaborate. So, Taoqi may have a useful outro skill which assists characters like Changli and Jinhsi in their quests to absolutely tear apart the Tower of Adversity, but Baizhi is free, and most people will have selected or gotten a Verina by this point in time. You're only going to be using Taoqi if you have major skill issue. This is because that is essentially what Taoqi is, a big skill issue fix. She prevents you from getting one-shot, and in the late game of wuwa, healing starts to become super irrelevant because most major bosses and holograms will kill you in 1 to 3 shots, so you simply have to become a dodging god. Taoqi prevents this at the cost of much lower buffing and utility. She offers you the ability to stay alive with less skill expression required. This might be a big positive for some people, but for more skilled players I'd honestly recommend steering clear of Taoqi. Taoqi also does negative damage even at a 6, and her Concerto rotation to get that outro skill buff in the first place takes ages even with an R5 Concerto energy weapon. Such as Discord, for example. Discord mentioned? Wasting all your time on a buff, even if it is a pretty big one, just brings your team's damage down far too much to be considered justifiable. She does have high buffing potential of Changli, since most of Changli's damage spread is within her skill, and Taoqi deepens that by 38%, which while that is honestly huge, the flaw of her field time is too much to overlook, and this therefore makes Taoqi more of a damage per screenshot option that you can run alongside of Verina or Baizhi. Plus, Taoqi's outro is not compatible with swap cancels on Changli's skill, and I would even argue that Verina provides you more survivability than Taoqi if you unlock her inherent skill 2 at level 70, which for the uninitiated prevents the character from dying in one shot while also having heals on top. Not a highly formidable option. Now, I'd like to summarize all the outside factors you can bring in to buff up your Changli's damage performance. I've mentioned them a couple times throughout this video already, but here's a dedicated segment towards this so you can come back later and skip back if you need a quick refresher. By quote-unquote external buffs, I mean buffs that are caused by a character from something like echo sets or a weapon, or anything that is a buff which isn't coming directly from their main core abilities. Alright, so, Wuthering Waves is essentially still in its infancy stages, so the amount of supportive echo sets we have is at an all-time low. As of now, your main pick would be Moonlit Clouds, for the fact that it provides your character 10% energy recharge, which is super nifty, and 22.5% attack to a single character that you swap into on outro. Then there's 12% damage bonus from the Impermanence Heron, which is rather strong and well worth your time. Note that every single one of those buffs will be cancelled on swap out. Then, as for your third slot supports, you have the wondrous Rejuvenating Glow, which gives you a crazy 15% team-wide attack buff that lasts for 30 seconds after you trigger a heal. Super efficient echo set that is well worth using on your third slot character. Then there's the Bellborn Geo Cologne, in which outside of the survivability you get from it, you get a 10% damage boost for your current teammates, which disappears after 15 seconds. But life would be too easy if we just left it at that. No, there's a few other notable things I should mention about the Bellborn Geo Cologne. 15 seconds, unfortunately, isn't enough time to reach the end of Changli's rotation while making sure she has full buffs from her Hybrid's Moonlit Cloud set and possibly any buffing-based outro skills considering the full rotation. Changli has one of the longest rotations in the game at around 13 to 14 seconds with Geon levels of field time. It works until the end of Changli's rotation if you're playing her in a team with Encore Yinlin, and the end of Changli's rotation is where the majority of her damage lies. But unfortunately, it's a little too clunky to work on a majority of other Changli teams that have different timings. It's too complex to consistently time Changli's rotations with the timing of the bell. This further highlights why the Changcore and Changling duo are easily some of the Wayfinder's best partners in crime. As for weapons, the only weapon which has a buff that can affect your teammates is Static Mist's 10% attack buff, which for the uninitiated is the standard 5-star pistol. Otherwise, any other form of buffing within Changli's teams as of current date comes from directly within their kits. Changli's team building future is quite uncertain. On one hand, because she's so flexible, she may see plenty of use with future units. We'll have to wait and see if she has any promise with the likes of somebody like Zheji or Changli Yao. On the other hand, she's rather greedy for field time and has a rather DPS-like playstyle, so it's more likely that Changli herself would like to see some new supports as opposed to Changli herself being a support for a new upcoming character. Encore is simply a unique case due to her swap-cancelling nature. Perhaps if Encore got power crept by limited 5-star, which is a more juiced-up version of her current kit, with all the swap-cancelling still intact, oh my god, juice mentioned, then Changli will cook there too. I doubt that we'll ever see a Changli dedicated support, but rather we'll see a support someday that just so happens to complement her attack patterns wonderfully, and then will just so happen to become her new best-in-slot teammate. But if that were to be the case, it's probably a future that is rather distant to us as of now. Yet alas, as of now, Changli has some really solid team synergies which will help her thrive in the current meta. There's something for everyone here in terms of the preferred playstyle you may have when it comes to Changli, and while she has her definitive best-in-slot options, her other budget choices still aren't half bad either. On the whole, I'm pretty happy with how her current team options are turning out, and I look forward to ensuing some swap-cancelling madness with Changli alongside my Encore once she releases. I'll brush over all her synergies once again when they've been solidified in detail upon her release in my upcoming full Changli guide. Hopefully this video is able to tell you Changli's best teammate synergies. This has been Juice, signing out, and Changli's true best synergy is that really epic umbrella that she holds.